Steve asked me to introduce him, and he wrote up this nice bio, and I told him I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to just make something up. I just want to raise a show of hands. How many of you are here because you have met and talked to Stephen Bost about Ozark Chinquapin trees? Okay, he is the founder of the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation, and he has this infectious habit of talking about the Chinquapin tree, and by the time you're done, you're thinking, ooh, I want to be a part of that. And that's largely how a lot of us have gotten into that. Or you've talked to somebody who has talked to somebody who's talked to Steve Bost, and that's how you've gotten in part of this. And this is a Tree Roots organization, and the attitude about this whole Ozark Chinquapin Foundation is we want people to feel like they're part of the solution. Steve is a husband, he's a father, he has been working for the state park system for what, over, was it?
26 years.
26 years. And 26 years with state government's kind of like a prison sentence, but it was the one that he volunteered for. And I say that I work for state government too. But he loves what he does. He's very passionate about a lot of things, and Chinquapins is just one of many things he's knowledgeable about. And once he gets this up and going, you're going to find out that he knows quite a bit about this Chinquapin tree, and he's worth taking notes about. Now, Steve, I don't know if I covered anything in your bio, but that's the introduction I think you're worthy of. You're a good man, you're smart, and you're worth listening to.
Thank you. I appreciate that, AJ.
And with that, let's give him a warm round of applause.
Now, one thing that I caught, and this has nothing to do with AJ. This is what I did where I messed up at. I don't know what happened with the technology. Like I said, you can follow me around, but I noticed on the one I had before, it said saving an Ozark treasure. And so I saw that on the front, and I caught it, and I thought, whoops, okay. So I'm going to switch, and can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to try to see which is the best location here. Okay, can you still hear me? Okay. See what I can do. I can just hold this. Is that working okay? Okay, very good. Okay. Well, glad to have everybody up here. And this whole thing that I've been doing has been just the most incredible thing. And trying to save this rare tree that no one thought ever existed. By the way, this is me in the picture right here with the bear. And working with state parks, I got to do some pretty amazing things. And so along the way doing resource management and interpretation and restoration of native plant and animal communities, I took more of a shine into this, and I began to really be interested in it. And for everybody here in this room, and I've said this before, I want everyone to know that all of you in this room know that you can make a difference in this world. And by the time this meeting is over with, hopefully you'll be inspired as I am. But I think none of us fully appreciate or realize the difference we make in the world around us. And so this is a picture.
Something happened.
Oh, okay. Is that okay there?
But something happened. You were louder.
It's not.
Okay.
I need to move over to this side, Steve. Get away from the speaker.
Okay. So is that okay here?
Yes.
There you go. Okay then. So anyhow, none of us, I think, fully appreciate or realize the difference we make in the world around us. And how many birders do we have in here? Raise your hand up. Okay. What kind of bird is this that we have? Does anybody know?
Baby bird.
What now?
A baby bird.
A baby bird. Okay, it is a baby bird. That's good. It's a yellow-breasted chat. And at the park, I had somebody brought two of these in, and a cat was about to eat them. And they couldn't find the nest, and so this is my son right here when he was little. But we all have the ability to make a difference in the lives of others in the world around us, and I think we never fully appreciate that until we lived a few years. So keep that in mind today, and I'm just amazed by how one person can make a difference. And so keeping that in mind, I had one person make a big difference for me. And Verla, are you in here somewhere? Is she here? There you go, raise your hand up. So her dad lived to the ripe old age. He was almost 100 when he passed away. And that's good that she's here today and she came all the way up. If it weren't for her father, I would not be standing here today telling you about these trees, literally. He inspired me so much about this tree that it disappeared. So keep that in mind. So the Ozark Chinquapin tree, you can parallel this to a lot of different things. One of them would actually be the passenger pigeon that went from billions to almost zero, or it did go to zero. And so, they were abundant and widespread. and they were a very important part of the ecosystem, and they're gone. And so here we go. This is Harold Adams right here, and I had to do a lot of work to get this picture of Verla. So when I would go camping out up by what is now National Park Service land, I met Harold Adams, and it's spelled Hearold Adams. And he was camped out along the Current River where I used to hunt at, and we became good friends. And he would camp out, and his family would come up with him, and he would tell me this story all the time about how important these trees were, and they were all gone. Well, when I first went to college, I first became a forestry degree. That was my first degree I was working on. Later I would change it and got a degree in history and one science. So everyone I talked to had never heard of this tree he was talking about. And I thought, something's wrong. This is not adding up. And so when I would go back again, and I would go bow hunting the next year, I'd talk with him a little bit more, try to find out more about this tree that nobody seemed to know about. So I was really intrigued by it, and it led me to where I'm at today. And so there he is, he's out on his campsite out in the woods right here, and he's describing to me a recollection from his childhood about the Chinquapin trees and how they were the #1 food for wildlife and people. And they were so dependable, they were more dependable than a crop of corn. Now they're all gone. And so that really inspired me. Okay, so the Ozark Chinquapin tree, Castanea ozarkensis, sometimes called the Ozark Chinquapin or Ozark chestnut, is real drought tolerant, and it grew to 2 to 3 feet diameter, and it bloomed in late May, early June, after the threat of frost. And the trees produced a bounty of nuts each year without fail, and it was nutritious food sought by humans and wildlife, and it was highly prized because of rot-resistant wood, and it made very excellent railroad ties and fence posts, and even musical instruments. And you can see what AJ's got over here, just visual enchantment to see all this stuff he's put together. If you get a chance, you need to take a look at some of that. So here's a picture of me. I found this in southeast Missouri, where experts had said that they were never at, and there's a big log, and they were growing everywhere. And since there's a fire there, they actually did an article in the magazine, I think Missouri Life magazine, and it was 101 degrees when I had this picture made. I was covered with sweat. They photoshopped the sweat off of me. I said, that sweat needs to be on there. Because I've done a lot of work and spent a lot of time and burned up a lot of miles in shoe leather trying to save this tree. And so anyhow, and here's another connection. Everyone with the Cherokee Nation, would you care to raise your hand up? Okay, very good. They're going to be doing an excellent presentation for us later on. And so years ago, a friend of mine told me about his best friend, Tino Burnett, and he was telling about his recollection of the Ozark Chinquapin trees. So Tino, that's him on the left right here, he was a Cherokee warrior in World War II, and just a wealth of knowledge, and I interviewed him on the phone, and we talked, and later on he would be one of our honorary board members on the foundation of the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation. And Tino told me, he said, I remember the trees when I was growing up as a kid in Oklahoma. I used to walk in the woods with my bare feet. My skin was a lot tougher back then, but I would step on one of those burrs, and boy, would it hurt. They're the sweetest nut you ever did want to eat, and I keep hearing that time and time again. And I remember a tree back in 1963 is just loaded with them Chinquapins. They grew on a hillside, down a gully, the bank of a creek. They just grew all over the place, but not really abundant. In Oklahoma, the biggest ones I ever saw were 7 to 9 inches, and I would love to see another Chinquapin tree. And so Tino's recollection was really good, and read the bottom part of this. Cherokee descendant, lifetime resident, recalling his memories of the Ozark Chinquapins before the blight reached Oklahoma. And he says, I would love to see another Chinquapin before I die, but I don't think I will. Folks, I called him on the phone and talked to him, and I sent Tino Burnett some of our best seed that we have that are adapted to southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas. He went out with his grandchildren and planted those trees with grow tubes, and some of those are still growing today. And so that was a huge thing. And so what happened to the trees? And AJ, if you can't hear me more, just wave your arm and I'll know to hold it closer, okay? And so what happened to the trees? Well, here's a picture of the Grand National Champion in 1991 before the Blight. And there's another one right behind it here. And Larry Burford, where are you at? Larry's back in the back. And Larry was able to rescue seed from this tree before a tornado took it out sometime after this picture was made. Probably about 93, I think, somewhere there, maybe, Larry. I don't know. And so we've got the genetics now. So those are Chinquapin trees. You can see the trunk right here. This is about all you'll see. And if you have a forest fire, it will completely remove all the evidence of those trees ever being there. So here's an open end of the canopy, and here's a rare site. This one got some sunlight. They went in and did some selective cutting here, and this one popped up. It was just a little sprout, not much bigger than a foot probably, but that canopy was released. This tree, as it gets a little bit larger, will get the blight. It's a cycle where they'll get the blight, and it repeats time and time again. And a lot of us in resource management with U.S. Forest Service, state parks, Arkansas Forestry, MDC, we all do burns. And this tree at one time was very fire tolerant. They grew real quickly and healed quickly from the blight. But now though, when you have a burn, you're going to have in an almost immediate proximity, you're going to have, I'm going to see if that pointer reach over here. You're going to have dead wood in immediate proximity to green sprouts. And we're finding that we're losing these stump sprouts too that are barely hanging on. So we keep losing more of them. Logging practice and later the chestnut blight, Cryphonectria parasitica, would wipe out Ozark Chinquapins. And today, only blighted stump sprouts remain of this once important tree. And sprouts emerge from the stumps, many managing to produce some nuts. But within 4 to 6 years, the blight again strikes, killing the sprouts, starting the blight cycle all over again. And the number of surviving stumps and the historic range of the tree continues to shrink. And they have a very characteristic look to them. And look at all the insects that are eating up these leaves. Everything goes after these trees. And you can't see it in this picture, but uphill from it, and this is one of the few mountains in this area near the Arkansas-Missouri border where it have Chinquapins, and all the others have been converted to pasture or to orchards and farms. And this one place, even though they had logged it, still had remnant populations. And you can't see it up through the fog, but there's a bulldozer sitting up there with a sign that says lots for sale, and these Chinquapins are now gone. So another thing that happened to them is our forest logging practices without long-term sustainability or conservation happen, and burning, erosion. In Missouri, we rank #1 as the state with the most erosion in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. Burned and eroded, failed farming, attempts to open range livestock. And so this is the big mill at Grandin, which was the biggest timber mill in the world at that time. And so here's what you see. So you can see where everything was cut over and the trees that produced mast were gone, then burned, and then grazed by the livestock. And here's a slide down into Current River, a log slide. So this is what happened, and the land had taken a beating from it, as well as any surviving Ozark Chinquapin trees. So the lost range of the Ozark Chinquapin, we've done a lot of work on this. And this map is not even truly reflective of the range. It doesn't show Mississippi for some reason, or most of Oklahoma, but the range was quite a bit larger than what we think. And we're changing people's minds about that with proof. This is a picture that Tori Carson gave me from Cossatot State Park. And this is at a gravel quarry that they had. And they had a very large, you can see the size of these people, these trees, a very large Ozark Chinquapin. Looks like another one bite right here as well too. Really large tree, and I'll try to show you on this. And so they said, we need to try to save this tree. It's the only mature Ozark Chinquapin tree that we know of. And so they had good intention. I don't know if you can see that truck very well, but they went in, and this poor tree was sitting out by itself. And they did a Herculean effort to load that thing up and put it on this flat blade, or this flat truck with dualies on it, and tried to haul it off. You see the tree standing up? The guy that actually was in charge of this, I talked to him at Cossatot State Park, and the picture I saw of it was the tree actually laying down. And I think my clicker quit working here. There we go. The tree was actually laying down and pointed backwards. So you can see that root mass around this thing. They had good intentions. Now look at the people standing right here by it in that tree. That was a large Chinquapin. They spent over $30,000 to try to save this tree. And at least they attempted to, and it failed. And I can't even get a little 1-foot-year-old tree to transplant with their big tap roots. So that's the kind of stuff that these trees have gone through. And it's unknowingly we cut down a lot of them and removed a lot of them because we thought maybe they were something else when they would go out and do timber stand improvement or when they would bulldoze. And so information is absolutely powerful. And so how important was the tree? Well, it was important to wildlife. Native Americans understood this long before us, and they were taking care of them, and it was a food source for them. And one of the names I know, Mark Dunham told me that the Cherokee has for it. They have several names for the tree, and one of them is the bread tree, which I thought was kind of interesting. They would ground up the high-protein nuts and use it for cooking and making a kind of bread. It's a keystone species and had a significant impact on people, wildlife, and rare ecosystems where it occurred. And so consistent nut crop every year, high-protein food for people and wildlife, and it made large nut crops every year, and it grew on real rocky, well-drained soil that was so poor of nutrients that a lot of other plants struggle on it, and very drought tolerant, blooms in late May or early June after frost. Wood is very rot resistant, produces nuts in 3 to 5 years, and we did not know that. And where's Chris White at? Chris White will tell you a little bit later on, we had a tree that's 2.5 years old, made nuts. Is that not correct? Okay. And so we're learning a lot more things with our research, test plots, and the work that we're doing, and we try to share that with everyone. And if you don't feel good about yourself, I've planted a lot of trees, and all of us have. We've had them fail and die, so don't feel bad if they die on you, because you can follow me around and feel real good about your tree planting skills. So they were widespread at one time and common, and in 2005 I began the search to try to find them. And this is a witness tree marker. This is an Ozark Chinquapin, and there's since been wildfire come through there. And this sign is laying in, it's what's left of a burned, charred out rootstock, or where that was at. So this is a stump up here of Ozark Chinquapin, and there's a sprout. So it went from being a widespread tree that was important to wildlife that made nuts every year, and now its loss has really, really been dramatic for the ecosystems. And we found out a lot of things that we didn't know. So when I began to look for these trees, here's what I ran into. And so I've got a degree in history, I've got another degree in science. The more you learn, you realize you don't know that much after all. And so here's what I met time and time again. People would tell me, I'm talking about tree book authors and tree experts as they were called, and they said, you're wasting your time and are on a ghost hunt. The tree no longer exists. All you're going to find is stump sprouts. The trees are no longer here. If there were any tree that would survive, we would know about it. Well, those folks, most of those, didn't spend much time in the woods like a lot of us do. And I'm not bashing anyone, because everything we know now, at one time we did not know it, and we learned it in time. So, once you share new findings with people, then it changes what we thought before, and it changes the dynamics, the whole picture of what we think really took place. And so here's a tree. This is Tim Smith showed me this one. This is in southwest Missouri. Boy, Tim, I wish I had a wider view when we did that. You can see burn marks. This area had been burned, and we had I forget if it was a blackjack oak or which one right by us. But look at this Chinquapin. It looks like a ghost out there amongst all that charred burn, and they heal very quickly. They'll grow in rocky soil like this, about a 1/2 inch or 2/3 of an inch DBH every year. And here's a tree that we found on a horse trail in southwest Missouri. Never had blight, had limbs cut off of it. And this tree was right by a horse camp. And it was in southern exposure, so it got all kinds of sun. Me and Shane Matzenbacher went over to collect pollen from it. And we were so excited about saving these genetics. Well, guess what? We were in a car wreck going over to get this done. And this tree died of being exposed to this open area and trampling, and the 2013 it died from the drought. And here's a tree in Mississippi. This is the state champion. And this particular tree, I'm happy to say that I've got some sampling, some sky wood that we did some grafts on. And where's Joshua Granger at? Joshua, way back in the back here. If you hadn't met Joshua, you need to meet him. He's from Mississippi. And he's the assistant professor in forestry at Mississippi State University. Am I saying that right? And he is taking back with him a clone off of this tree to start a research test plot in Mississippi, the first one ever for local genetics. And I'm mailing him seed this year from other locations in Mississippi. We got our first ever seed from, even though they had a record drought this year too. So we've been proceeding on even with this stuff going on. And here's another one in southwest Missouri, and that tree is still alive today. Here's one that we found in Alabama, and we saved genetics off of it. Here's another one up in North Arkansas near Harrison, and just a lot of work. And here's one that was in southwest Arkansas in Clark County. It was a Grand National Champion. And so here's a recovery action plan we came up with. We're trying to find surviving trees, and we depend on everyone to do this. Everybody in this room and others that aren't here have helped with this. And then we collect the seed and pollen and grass and do DNA testing on them and blight testing. We preserve the genetic diversity of the trees. Even if the trees aren't blight resistant, we're still wanting to save the genetics from those areas. And in our breeding program, we are tailored it down now to where we're very specific to the area where those trees are found. We want to restore those genetics back. We do controlled cross-pollinating of surviving trees with desirable traits, and we inoculate the finished ones and with blight. We've actually updated that. Leslie will tell you a little bit about what we're doing now. And over this old method we were going to use, we've jumped ahead 10 to 15 years into the future now. And it's amazing what Leslie's going to share with you. Raise public awareness and outreach like what we're doing here, and then raise money for it. We're a nonprofit, but we take donations, and if it weren't for those, we couldn't do what we're doing. And dedicated locations in and out of the range of blight, and send seed from Ozark Chinquapin Foundation are sent out to members for reintroduction. And we expand the restoration to state, federal agencies and tribal agencies. And for over 15 years of laboratory work, our mission has been to create a blight-resistant Ozark Chinquapin tree and preserve the genetic diversity of the native range. And I'm happy to say success. And we've had that tested in 2 labs. Leslie will tell you a little bit about what went into that. But how many of y'all are familiar with the American Chestnut Foundation? Anybody? Okay. So they've taken a little bit different approach to us, and we're friends with them, we work with them, and their approach is to go in to genetically modify the trees. That's their route that they do. And they also do advanced blight testing like us. They took some of our trees and tested them, and they were superior and blight resistant to the Darling 58 transgenic American chestnut. And that's from their test results. We already knew that from the results Leslie did. So we had 2 different laboratory sources to confirm that. So we collect pollen from a tree, and I go through a process where we dry it and we'll freeze it. And we've got some pollen that's been frozen for over 12 years that we're still using now when we do controlled cross-pollination. So we're saving this genetic diversity, and I save that pollen. Right now I've got more pollen frozen and stored this year, and I think we're up to about 26 trees that I've got pollen from that we saved, thanks to all the efforts that everybody did this last April and May. And so here's one of our test plots that we got. All these trees in here are very large now. I'll show you a picture of one a little bit later on. So we take remote places out of the way. We don't tell people where these are at, and we plant the trees. This is, I think this was probably about 2012. You can see some trees coming out of the tube pretty good here. And this is nuts on a tree that's 3 years old right here from that same plot. And this is Pioneer Forest out with us, and they've done a lot. They've actually done so much work behind the scenes with us. They're star, and so they made a difference and believed in what we were doing and what I was doing way back when very few people knew about the tree. And so in cross-pollination, we'll take pollen from one tree, that's real good, and we may sometimes drive 100 or 200 miles, and we'll cross it with another tree that's really good. And you can see right here the swelling of the nuts. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. So that one was successful. And so success, we created an Ozark Chinquapin tree that has high resistance to the chestnut blight and as good or better than the Chinese chestnut. We always compare our samples to Chinese and American. It's fast growing, early nut bearing, large crop of nuts. And we used to think they only made nuts in September. Well, some trees will produce nuts later. And actually we have some trees, the nuts don't really start to open up until late October and into November. And that's a surprise. That's a genetic diversity. And so this genetic diversity is how we got where we're at today. And immune to root rot disease, the Phytophthora cinnamoni, and that's probably by default. And let's see, resistant to the Asiatic gall wasp. They did studies on this, Sandra Anagnosticus, and said that unlike the American chestnut, the Ozark Chinquapin is immune to the Asiatic gall wasp. Nuts are higher in protein and carbohydrates than white oak, red oak, American chestnut, Dunstan chestnut, or Chinese chestnut. Rugged, once established, it's drought tolerant and coexists with the Asiatic oak weevil. And I've got pictures of that coming up. Under good conditions, unfertilized, first nuts in 3 to 5 years. They're good to eat. How many of y'all in this room have eaten Ozark Chinquapin nuts? Okay. And AJ, did we get a basket out here for everybody with the nuts in? I brought a few here. He's going to show you. And if you've never eaten one, if you would, go to that basket and get one. Some of those are 1 year old, some are 7 years old. If you see mold on it, don't eat it when you crack it open. But once you put it in your mouth, they're real dry, like dried parched corn, but they hydrate very quickly, and they have the most incredible taste to them and most incredible aftertaste. And so they're good to eat, and no wonder wildlife likes them. A plentiful, high-protein, yearly dependable nut crop that benefits natural ecosystems and people again. And so every time we find one of these trees, big smiles on her face, like we found a geocache full of gold coins. And so just a great, great thing. And so this is my son again, and I do a thing with my family I call FFF. Has anybody ever heard of that? Before you cringe too much, let me explain what it is. It means forced family fun. Yes, we're going on this vacation. Yes, we're planting a garden. Yes, you're going to help me with the Chinquapin trees. Yes, we're going to plant a flower bed around our mailbox. And they all were glad that they did it, though. So the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation is a nonprofit organization of outdoors men and women with a vision of restoring the Ozark Chinquapin to its historic native range. Through our efforts and those of hundreds of volunteers over the last decade, we are attempting and we have accomplished establishing a viable seed base through research and controlled manual cross-pollination of surviving trees. And our goal has been met to develop a 100% Ozark Chinquapin that's blight resistant and distribute the seed to everyone interested in helping. And so this is a tree right here, one of our best ones that we've got. And you can see the nuts on it right here. And so those particular trees, we have a U.S. patent on that. It is so profound that people said you'll never get a patent on this because it is so difficult to do. And we share that with everyone. And if anybody wants to make money off of it, we say you have to have board approval to do it. But we encourage you, whenever we send out seed from this tree or any of them, give them to your friends, plant them, spread them out, and start restoring them back in your area. And so this is kind of like a higher calling, what we're doing, and it takes a lot of people to make it happen. And we've learned a lot of things in laboratory and field research and the science that goes into this research and development. So here we go. This is Chinese chestnut right here, and on blight testing, we've moved forward now, and Leslie will tell you, we're doing stem tests as well, but you can see where we stack up at. So American chestnut is way down here, that's Chinese. Leslie will go in detail and explain to you how we did this. So Leslie Bost-Carter's laboratory findings were also confirmed in a separate study by State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Their laboratory research revealed some of our Ozark Chinquapin Foundation trees have significantly higher, not a little bit, but significantly higher blight-resistant than the genetically modified Darling 58 American chestnut tree, which has required thousands of dollars spent in its development. And we did this on a shoestring budget. Folks, this is a conservation success that we're talking about right here that everybody in this room helped make possible. And so, yay! Can you still hear me?
Yep.
In the back, Leslie, can you hear me? Raise your hand. Okay. Lost my microphone there for a minute. Okay, this is another one of the creations of A.J. Hendershot. A.J., raise your hand up. This guy is so talented. I think the trees sent him to us. And so if the trees could talk, they would thank A.J. and love you in this room for what you've done. And I think if the trees could also talk, they would tell us they don't want to come back as a hybrid. They want to come back as a 100% pure native Ozark Chinquapin to do its job it's been doing for the millennia and being a valuable asset to wildlife and rare ecosystems and people. That's what I think. And so this is a spread of the chestnut blight, and we're finding out that the range, like I said, is quite a bit larger than what we thought. All kinds of surprises. I think the best conservation on the planet are Native Americans. And it's amazing to me how that we are just now learning what they've known for thousands of years. I think it's very ironic. So I got an interesting call from Delaware, and there's a researcher in Delaware who told me, he said that we've been doing this in secrecy, but we've been excavating, doing archaeological digs in Delaware. And I thought there was no place where there weren't people at in Delaware. And he said that we've got different village sites where the Delaware people were at, and they go by the name Lenape, is what they go by today. And they went back from 6,000 years before present to about 400 years before the French and the English and the Dutch showed up. And they did radiocarbon dating, and they looked at remnant surviving population of Chinquapin trees at Delaware at Lenape Indian village sites. And they found some pretty amazing things. Around these villages, there were groves of Ozark Chinquapin trees, remnants still alive back in 2005, 2007. And it was so profound that after they did this research, it took about 7 years, and they made a book and they put it online for free. And around these village sites, there were Ozark Chinquapin trees. And there's some other interesting finds. Has anybody in this room ever heard of box huckleberry? I haven't either. You have?
Yes, from you.
Yeah, I told you. Okay. So I didn't know what box huckleberry was. It's one of the rarest plants on planet Earth with less than 100 living specimens. And for some reason, the seed are no longer viable on it when you eat a box huckleberry. But the Lenape people were planting those, and they grow by runners. They grow 6 inches a year. And so there's no more seed production around each of these village sites in Delaware. And they looked at some others up in Rhode Island. I hadn't got that far on the research paper yet. And they found box huckleberry growing around them, and they were a food source. And then they also did burning. They went back, and the Native Americans burned the forest to encourage nut-bearing trees like the oaks, the hickories, the Chinquapins, the chestnuts. And it's very interesting what they put together. And so they also had a plant called, let me get this straight, it's called watermelon cucumber. And if you look at it online, one article will say it's real high in protein, one of the highest protein of any plants. Another one says it's poisonous. Well, it is poisonous if it overripens and turns black. You're not going to find those unless you get down into Mexico or Central America. The Lenape had those growing in Delaware, and there's remnants still growing there today. And so these trees are still producing nuts today, and the Lenape, were pushed out of their property, and they came in. Some of them went to Ohio, some went to Indiana, some went to Missouri, and they're in Delaware. I'm sorry, they're in Oklahoma today. Of course, that's where the Lenape are at. And so anyhow, they sent me some samples of this, and I contacted the Lenape. I'm trying to think of the person I talked to, and I explained to them about what was going on. I said, did you know that your ancestors, this was an important tree to them, and I found out they just got 400 acres for native plants of the Lenape. And I asked him if he would be interested in growing these. And he said, well, what exactly do you want for this? I said, I don't want anything. I'll come there and help you plant them and give you grow tubes, you know. And he started laughing and got giddy. He said, well, this is great. He said, let me tell the tribal elders and we'll see what we can do. And so if they want us to, we'll go ahead and share with them seed that are adapted to Oklahoma. And so this came from Delaware, and these are remnant populations. And this is nuts in this bag. Folks, this is sustainable agroforestry. I mean, you can't find this an older sustainable forestry crop anywhere in the United States than what we're looking at right here. And we've got proof positive of it. So this is interesting. And they were doing this for 6,000 years before present. And they cut away real large trees like some of the poplars, like tulip poplars that were around them. And so the Lenape did the same thing to make sure they got sun. And then they began to make nuts as well too. And there's blight in there as well too. It looks like some resistance to it. We don't know if it's hypovirulence or natural resistance. So these are some of the areas that we found where that we know that there's remnant populations in. And DNA work done at the University of Alabama, they said the mean genetic diversity of surviving Ozark Chinquapins was found to be greater than the relic American chestnut, even though the range at the time is limited to the Ozark Mountains. They think that the range of the Chinquapin trees was limited to the Ozark Mountains, when in truth, it's actually a larger range than the American chestnut. And so then this is a picture. The top got cut off right here, but what we're working at right now is there's some differences though between the trees in the southern part of the range and northern part of the range. And if you look, you'll see the stems on the right from south of the Arkansas River are a little bit smaller, and the nuts look a little bit different, and the burrs look a little bit different than above the Arkansas River. And so that's some of the phenotype differences that we can actually see. So we're doing a DNA study right now, and this is a study done by Joey Shaw, and it confirmed the same thing about it being the older species. And so we've been doing all kinds of work. We do work with hypovirulence. Fred's been doing some just here recently. If you get a chance, ask him a little bit about that. So the tree thrives on well-drained rocky soil, sandy. And if you look on here, me and my son Sam and Leslie and other members of my family that go up there, and AJ can testify this, when you're up on these plots, you're walking on rocks. I mean, your feet are not on soil. There's no soil here. They're in the rocks, and they're growing really, really well. And so along the way, we found some neat ways that are organic to keep the squirrels and the squirrels and the chipmunks away so we can send seed out to you. Folks, it's a job. And years like this year when we didn't have, we have a bumper crop of squirrels, and there was very few acorns. Everything's trying to get the Chinquapin nuts. And so you can see the female flowers in this picture, and this is some of the work, very intensive work we're doing to cross-pollinate and hit that window right. And then we blight test what we produce, and then the ones that are the best, then we cross those again. And so we had some surprises. There's a very unusual phenomena that's been missing from our forest. You get a little further in the eastern U.S., it was the American chestnut. Well, in this part of the country, we had the dominant species, of course, was the Ozark Chinquapin. And when these trees bloom, you have insects in abundance. And we're going to have an insect program later on this afternoon for you. And I mean, they're just everywhere. And so Leslie and I went out, let's see, I guess it was last year. Let's see if I can go back. Oops. I don't know how this happened, AJ. I need to go back.
The lower button.
The lower button?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Well, it's good to have you here. See what he does? This is a beat. So this is an unusual phenomenon that takes place in the forest where you have this huge bloom of these Chinquapin trees. You know, it lasts, and there's some variance within the geographic area. And so the bloom lasts basically from May into June. And there are literally millions of insects that come in and feed on these, nighttime and daytime. So Leslie and I were out trying to pollinate at night because my wife was sick at the time. And I kept saying, Leslie, please hold the flashlight on. And she goes, Dad, there's something that keeps flying in overhead. And I'm like, well, it's probably, maybe an owl flying in. She goes, no, they keep flying. I looked up and shined my flashlight around, and it looked like a headlamp of insects, but it was bats flying around. All around. They were feeding on this smorgasbord of insects that were coming out because of this bloom taking place. And I was not ready for that. So here's a picture that I've got of a red bat under the leaves of a chinquapin. He's waiting until the night shift when the dinner bell rings again to come back out. And so we didn't know about this. And so how many birders do we have in here again? So correct me on some of this if I'm not exactly right. But whippoorwills, not chuckwills widows, but whippoorwills have declined about 71% since the 1960s. And we found out some pretty amazing things, and so we had to do a lot of pollination work 2 years ago at night. I had 1 year, it's been maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I heard no whippoorwills, but heard them on the plots. I just thought it was coincidence. I didn't put the two together. And so me and Sam were coming downhill from doing some pollination work at night during the bloom, and the eyes of a whippoorwill will shine. You can see them really good. But if you start walking to them, guess what? They close their eyes and you can no longer see them. I didn't know they would do that. And so does everybody see that really plain with that little arrow's pointing at? Can everybody see that really well? I didn't think so. That's why I put another image at it. That's the whippoorwill. And it's a female, and she is on the nest, and she's actually incubating those eggs. And so we changed our route, and we gave her a little bit of room, and we went another way, and we used that pathway for about a week or so. And then another amazing thing happened. We came back through there again. I don't have a picture of that one. We came back through there again. There's a second nest, not too far from this one, and the whippoorwill looked like, it was during the daytime, it looked like a killdeer was dragging its wing like it was injured. Well, here's what happened. This whippoorwill started a second nest, and if there's plenty of food, like large beetles and moths, they will start a second nest, and if they have an abundance of food, they will do that, then they'll allow the male to take over the nest. We saw this whippoorwill in another path we were using about a week later, and we had to detour again because she had a second nest there, and it was a surprise to us. So I like this picture. Historically, the Ozark Chinquapin was a keystone species tree that benefited a variety of wildlife because of the burrs, leaves, blooms, and nuts. And this is from John James Audubon, and it would be before 1850. And look real close, you can see those are Chinquapin nuts. That's not American chestnuts there. And so here's, the tree has been missing, in some places 80 years. And so here's a modern one, and this picture is taken at Hobbs State Park. It's a yellow-throat warbler today, 2022, taking advantage of the phenomena of this large Chinquapin bloom. And it looks almost like he's got an insect in his beak right there, Steve. And so we're doing research on the insects, and we're doing a really good one at Hobbs State Park, and we're uncovering a lot of new, amazing information. One big surprise that we had, there was a chestnut bee that was thought extinct from planet Earth. Since the loss of the trees, they had not seen this since about the 1930s, and it's called the chestnut bee, and I'll probably butcher the scientific name of it, Andrina reni. And it was found on an Ozark Chinquapin tree in Connecticut. And the bee was thought extinct, and this was verified by the head guy for, with the U.S. government. He's their head entomologist, and he verified conclusively that was it. And so in theory, this would actually help the pollination of Chinquapin trees if there's a bee that would feed on the nectar in the blooms. So here's an interesting one. We're finding all kinds of insects on these trees. It's nonstop. And here at Mount Magazine, the extremely rare butterfly, the King's hairstreak butterfly, was found here at Mount Magazine, and there's been fewer than 30 specimens identified, and since, I guess, the 1930s as well. And it's pretty interesting. Even that bee, some samples or specimens were found in the 1920s out in Kansas. I found on looking at the research records. So all kinds of stuff going on with insects, just a non-stop smorgasbord. And so on our plots, we try to make sure that, when we grow these trees, we want to expose them to the rugged elements of what they're going to be dealing with. And if you look down at that picture in the lower right over here, you can see all the leaf damage on the chinquapin trees. And we've got an Asiatic oak weevil, and like a lot of creatures, they prefer chinquapin leaves over other leaves because they're such a good food source. There's no tannic acid in them. So the Asiatic oak weevil, we found out, loves chinquapin leaves more than it likes the oaks. And so if you look though, we've got some help. If you plant a chinquapin tree, you've got to spray the organic spray on the leaves that we've got until they get up to be about maybe 10 feet tall. Well, after 10 feet tall, we've got a helper that hops in there, and the northern perula. And I don't know if you've ever heard the noise these things make, but it sounds like taking a tablet of paper and going and I don't know if I did that right or not, but that's the noise it sounds to me. Northern perulas, I've watched them, and they go from tree to tree. They glean every single insect off of them. Folks, if we've been using poison on these trees, this would not have happened. And so, going organic where you don't depend on pesticide is a way to do it, and these trees are rugged. So after they get about 10 feet tall, the birds take over. Does anybody, well, some of you probably know, the reason why they don't go lower than 10 feet is because of something else. These trees attract a variety of wildlife, not just birds, but also deer, bears, chipmunks, flying squirrels, on and on and on. So the bobcats, you can see the bobcat right here. I've got 4 bobcats in 2 videos within 1 minute and 10 seconds on the plots. They're coming in and they're eating the chipmunks, the squirrels, the pack rats. In fact, me and my son Sam cleared a lot of the canopy under the chinquapin trees so the owls and the bobcats could be more successful trying to catch them so that we can get more nuts for y'all. And this is low-tech at its best, folks. It don't get any better. And so here's another one. You can see the bobcats. Some of y'all may not be able to see that very well. They blend in. I've got a video of one that hunkered down right here trying to catch some birds here. And I've got another one of one that has, I think, a chipmunk in its mouth. And this is what happens. So you bring back a species, you're going to have food for a lot of creatures, and there will be an abundance. So this kind of goes against a lot of things that were here. We've got abundance of bobcats, we've got abundance of birds of prey, but we also have an abundance of deer and all other sorts of wildlife. So when this tree was here, I'm totally convinced the population of animals was significantly higher than what we're seeing today. And so here's an indigo bunting in a tree that we had feeding on chinquapin pollen catkins and leaves. We were out doing some work mapping the trees, and does anybody care to guess what eggs these are from? Does anybody know? Got brown specks on it. I see somebody back here raising their hand. This is like an auction. If you adjust your glasses, I'm going to call on you. But anyhow, so there we go. So I think that's some cedar waxwing, I think. I could be wrong. And this is so interesting. So at the night shift, if you look real close at that same stump where the bobcat was at, there's not one, there are 2 screech owls right here. And usually the screech owls keep a low profile wherever you have great horned owls at, because they will catch them and eat them. There are 2 screech owls right there, and every night we have owls come in and they feed on them. If I get up there before daylight, I'm hearing the owls, call. And so I'm greeted by this, like, I don't know if they're welcoming me or like, you're here now, we've got to leave. And so this is a barred owl, and I looked at this video twice to see what was happening. There was a flying squirrel that came down here and landed. He's hovering, and then the thing shoots off and jumps off the tree, and the owl almost catches him at the last minute. That flying squirrel changed directions. You have to see it real close and barely missed it. But little dramas like this are happening because of these chinquapin trees. There's more wildlife where these chinquapin trees are at, and not just during this cycle. This tree just keeps giving, and this was, if you look at the trail camera, this is in December. We have pack rats, we have chipmunks, we have deer mice, we have all kinds of wildlife that come in. And we had, usually in August, we'll get storms that come in. The nuts and the birds are real heavy, and sometimes you'll get a heavy thunderstorm come in, and it will knock down birds, and I think, well, those are going to go to waste. Well, they won't be eaten, but later on, when you get shorter days, higher humidity, the needles will be softer, and some birds, like the blue jay here, have become experts at actually picking those out. And folks, there was acorns on the ground everywhere when this was made in 2022. And so they pick out the chinkapins. That's their food source of choice. And by the way, the blue jays are helping us. They're spreading these out into the forest, and we're out now further than over probably 120 yards seeing chinkapins that were brought there by wildlife. So Joe Neal, book author, identified in 4 hours at Hobbs State Park, and some of that was travel time, and he wasn't on the plots, identified on the chinkapin trees were indigo buntings, summer tangers, northern parula, northern cardinal, yellow-breasted chat, Carolina wren, yellow-throated warbler, yellow-billed cuckoos, yellow-throated vireos, Kentucky warblers, wood thrush, and Carolina chickadees. And if you look at that list really close, blue jays aren't on there, owls aren't on there. They're not feeding on them, but they're there. The owls are because of what they actually attract. And here's a real good picture I got of a trail camera I put on a pole up in Missouri on some plots that we've got. And that's a yellow warbler, not like that. And I saw one in Oklahoma, real beautiful bird, and it was in a chinkapin. When I got a picture of it, they just left it. And so, folks, these trees, the leaves, the nuts, everything about them keep attracting wildlife. And so bees like the honeybee are, they're not specific to one species, they're generalists. They'll feed from several different ones. But and we see honeybees in there too. They're gathering the pollen. And so these trees grow so fast. On the left, on the right is a tree that I planted, and that's a 3-year-old tree you're looking at. And it didn't even get good sunlight in the afternoon. And we're finding out that if you have an area where they can catch shade after about 2 or 3 o'clock, it may be better during times of drought. So this tree, look how tall it is compared to me. And there's Leslie right here, that was in 2021, the same tree. And very little watering was ever done with that tree, and it grew, and it keeps getting bigger. This, we were collecting so many nuts off one tree that was 10 years old that I just had to get a picture of this, and I saved that, and I've got it in the freezer. That had 47 nuts on the end of one branch, wow. And the branches will bend over like overloaded fruit trees because there's so many nuts on them. And you can look at this, and at the top you can see Ozark Chinquapin, 15.2% on this protein analysis we had done, and it beats the white oak, the scarlet oak, and even the American chestnut. And look at carbohydrates, same thing on it too. Folks, this is a smaller nut than the American chestnut and smaller than hickory nuts, but it's the most widely chosen food by wildlife I've ever seen, and they taste really good too. And so I had a bit of a surprise. You can see this ladder right over here. I worked so much on the plots trying to collect the nuts, and I was overconfident, and I thought, well, I can spray this pepper spray on the nuts and the burrs, and everything will stay away from it. Well, it works on most of them if you can catch it early. And so I got a surprise. So I had this bear show up, and it's a big female. She had no cubs because there was no acorns the year before. The nut crop had failed. And she's looking up in there, and was picking up nuts on the ground. I was so overconfident about this pepper spray that I had, I thought nothing's going to touch it. And when you spray that stuff out, it's, it just smells, you got garlic in it, you got cayenne pepper, you got jalapeno pepper, and mint. When you get done, it smells like a really good Mexican restaurant. But evidently, the bears, it didn't keep them away. This bear ate all the nuts on the ground, and I couldn't understand what happened. And I don't know if I didn't have a picture of that. Let me go back. But I had a picture of this bear. It actually walked up to this ladder I'd been on, and its back came up to the 3rd step. That 3rd step is where my belt is at. And so that was a very large black bear. And but it passed over the oaks, the acorns, because it knew what was the best food source for it. And that bear may have made cubs that year because of the chinkapin trees. So here's another protein analysis we did. We got Chinquapin, white oak, American chestnut, Dunstan chestnut, and Chinese chestnut. We're just way ahead on all of those, and it reflects in the flavor. Turkeys are declining everywhere right now, but around our plots, even though we have an abundance of bobcats, even though we have an abundance of other wildlife, we have more nesting hens around these trees than I've ever seen before. And I'm a hunter. I've hunted my whole life. And I think it's just a good place and a variety of habitat for them. They eat the Chinquapin nuts. And years ago, before it got brushy around our plots, we would see the turkeys in there every day. Every day they were in there. And just amazing. How many deer hunters we have in here? Okay. Me and AJ are actually selling coupons where you can find this deer. It's the only drop time I've ever seen. And I can't tell you where it was at, but there were Chinquapins nearby. I don't know if it's why he was there or not, but there were Chinquapins nearby. So a lot of work doing this. That's my son Sam right there. We have all the roads closed into our main plot that supplies most of the seed that you have. Arkansas Forestry is coming on, supplying more. And we have to carry everything in by hand. It's a lot of work. It's hot. You can look on some of the temperatures on these. Some of them, that one's cool, but some of them it's over 100 degrees. So one thing you can do to water trees in remote areas is what I did here. You can buy these tubs at Menards or Walmart, and they've got a recessed lid. You can drill holes in it, and I use just an old swimming pool, piece of metal on it to make it like an extra wing. And so instead of collecting 9 gallons of water in that tub, you can actually collect 27 gallons out in remote places. So it's a real low-tech way you can do it. In some places, if you can find it where you got a log on either side, you can times 5 the amount of water it collects instead of just using the tub itself. So it's a real low-tech way, and it's a rainwater catcher, and it works really good. So here's a tree on one of the plots, and I planted this in 2010, and it received very little water when I watered it in 2010. It went through the drought of 2012 and made it through. It was never watered even during that. And that tree is about 9.3 inches DBH right now. And Leslie said, Dad said, what about this tree? And so we have to carry in water, and so we have to be real resourceful of what gets water. And so this one barely is on an east slope of a hill, so it catches a little bit more shade in the afternoon at the base of the tree. And so a lot of really interesting things going on at Hobbs State Park. Steve Churchill has an army of volunteers, and this man does more to help people and encourage them. He's a lesson about what to do to help a good project grow, and I just can't say enough good stuff about what he's done by himself. And so they've done like an archaeological dig on the tree roots, and they've gone in, and when he was telling me what they were doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, digging that rocky ground, every root, seeing what it does, where it goes. I could not believe that. But look at the smiling faces on them. AJ, that looks like you on the right there. So they have done so much amazing work, and Steve's going to share all that with us later on, but we found out some pretty incredible thing about the root system. Folks, AJ Hendershot did all these drawings here by himself. So you can look on the upper left, that's a Chinquapin nut, and the taproot in the early years of this tree's growth are very important to its survival, like a lot of trees. Later on, they'll make roots that lateral out, but in a period of about 3.5 weeks, that taproot will grow 34 inches. I've measured it, 34 inches. And so that taproot being down in the ground and getting that thing off to start, you can actually tell if the taproot has made it the first year. If the leaves are a real brilliant dark green color, that means they made it. But look on the right over here. So this tree that they've got a picture of it, I think you said that's about a 4-inch tree. Is that correct, Steve?
It was about 5.
5 inches, okay. And so the work they've done so far, you can see where the tree, there's so many roots on top of roots that they're crossing each other right here, and they actually are putting down other taproots. So a root will go out, and it'll put down another taproot as survival mechanism. Then another root will go out, and it'll put down another taproot. So this is an extremely well-drained soil, and so we've learned a lot about watering. So when a tree is real young, like you're seeing in the middle, yeah, you may need to water straight down where it's at. But an older tree, though, we probably need to go out and look at the drip line, which extends way beyond the height of that tree and the drip line of the leaves. So really good job on that illustration, AJ. That's really great stuff. So we sent out a lot of seed to members. This is in 2022. This year we've got probably a little bit less than half the nuts that we ordinarily have, but hopefully we can take care of everyone. There's no guarantees because the seed that we're collecting are from really remote areas where they're kind of on their own. We do minimal amount of work to try to do what we can, but we want the wildlife to spread them. And so this year, last year, we had a total of, I think it was about 7,800 nuts. And this year we've got about half of that. But last year, though, of that 7,800 you see, we left an estimate was 23,000 nuts for the wildlife. And so we're trying to not take them all. We're leaving some for the wildlife as well. Just a lot of good work with different state and federal and tribal agencies and people that have property or they want to try to bring the tree back on their yard. Just a lot of good stuff. And this is on a tree that was planted not far from here. And when we have a field trip today, on Saturday, we're going to allow people to see some stuff with the trees. And this was planted. When you have them like this, we're going to root that long, that's almost too long. You need to plant them no later than when they get to look like this. If you do, they may fail. They may start declining though. So just a lot of good effort. And you can see the smiles. That's Chris White and his crew. And you can see the Chinquapin trees growing. And on that particular plot right there, we have 102 of our best genetics growing. And those seed will be shared with everyone. And so we're getting more and more restoration plantings that we're putting in. And then all of you in this room are doing your own on your own land or working with others. And so I'm really glad to see all that taking place. Just a lot of good work. That's with Arkansas State Parks. We got a new partner with the National Park Service up in Missouri. And that's the superintendent of the park there on your left, and they're holding, of all things, some Chinquapin birds with nuts in them. And so this is a really neat thing, William Terry. And so they've got 130 miles of land along the Ozark National Scenic Riverway on the Jacks Fork in the Current River. And the trees used to be there. And we have not so far found any yet, but we know they were there as late as the 1980s. Folks, this is what a conservation success looks like right here. I like this picture. And this is with Arkansas Forestry. And I have to give them credit. They're spread pretty thin like all of us are. And it's a real cold day. We did that planting. And something we can all be proud to be a part of. And I can't thank all of y'all enough for making this happen. And just a lot of good effort. I'm just amazed by all of it. So that's what it's all about. That's a basket of Ozark Chinquapin nuts. And there's a seedling on one of our best trees. And the forests we have today are different than the forest our grandparents had. However, if we all work together, we can once again make them a better place for wildlife and for our children to inherit. And that's my son. He was 4 years old. He knows more at that time about Ozark Chinquapins than most kids that were 4 years old did. So I don't know how I did on time, but that's my presentation. And I appreciate all y'all bearing with me.